currently in the scamming field, we've got a lot going on in the cryptocurrency scams. So, for example, where you can just open your Telegram application and it'll just pop up, these channels where they're promoting and saying, they're simulating it and saying, I'm just reporting I put in $5,000 and the next day it was 10 and then 15. Literally, we're conducting investigations. Currently, we've got an investigation where we've got a SIM farm of more than 50,000 cell phones.
Wow.
Where the criminals, syndicates are utilizing those SIM farms to basically populate those type of channels and simulate that there's a lot of interest in that. And we conducted 2 investigations in the past year where we saw that the hackers, before encrypting the environment, went into the financial system and we couldn't figure out why. So after we decrypted the information for the client, we advised them that we saw this access. They did an analysis and we found in both instances that they were making quite large yearly licensing fee payments to America of a couple of million rand. The hackers changed the banking detail on the system and just left it there, encrypted it afterwards with the hope that it never gets detected, and when that payment comes due, it goes out to them. We've been successful in identifying 2 hackers last December that we traced down to Cape Town. And in an effort with the Hawks, we were able to actually arrest them. They are currently still in jail, so they've spent jail for about 1 year and 3 months. They haven't received bail, and we're hoping that those are going to be the first guilties under the new Cybercrimes Act.
This episode of ITWeb TV is brought to you in association with ITWeb Security Summit, celebrating 20 years of bringing together the cybersecurity industry. Visit itweb.coza for more information. Hello and welcome to this edition of ITWeb TV. In the run-up to ITWeb Security Summit, we're going to be chatting to a handful of speakers who will be presenting at the event. We'll be picking their brains on what's happening in the cybersecurity space to give you a taste of what they'll be talking about, and hopefully a reason to attend. Today I'm joined by Professor Danny Myburgh, MD of Cyanre, but just because he has the title of Professor, don't think this is going to be a dry and dusty academic lecture. We'll be talking about some fascinating things from his career in the digital forensic space that spanned over 25 years. Danny, thanks for joining us. So if you can start off by just giving us an explanation of how digital forensics and cybersecurity fit together and how they differ.
Thanks, man. So digital forensics is an aspect in the investigation process where we identify evidence, collect evidence, and process the evidence. Obviously, for forensics, you want to preserve that evidence in such a format that you can actually utilize it in investigation purposes as well as prosecution. Now, the main problem that we've got is the aspects regarding data, and any data message it can very easily be changed or modified. So say, for example, I need to come and seize your cell phone, but and I want to present evidence from that cell phone against you at a later stage. If the court finds that I have changed evidence on that mobile phone after taking it away from you, then they can't trust the evidence. So you can think for yourself in terms of the computer, how easily you can add data to it or make changes to it. So that's why we've got the Electronic Transaction Communication Act that basically stipulates the procedures in terms of which evidence must be collected, managed, so that the courts can rely on it. And that's where the digital forensic part fits into it at the starting point. So we assist clients with containing the environment, and you'll see that a normal IT person in a SOC environment, they are set up to do exactly more or less the same, but they don't go that extra step in terms of how to properly identify all the potential sources of evidence, and then also to deep mine that device, for example. So in a normal SOC environment, you might be seeing the alerts, but if you could drill down to the local computer, it's got a lot more evidence that you can extract from it. Also to perform data recovery from it, to be able to return that, and then we do that collection of it in the correct way, do analysis of it, do a forensic report that adheres to requirements in terms of the information regulator, for example, or for prosecution purposes. And then we're also the type of IT specialist that goes to court and testifies on that evidence. And we see that quite often. An IT person is not the typical guy you want to put in a suit and put in a courtroom where he's cross-examined on everything. So, but that's the place where we actually specialize.
Okay. And is there anything, I mean, it sounds like most of what you're doing is kind of after the event, but you kind of, I mean, Cyanre, do you do stuff pre-event? Are you called in before big incidents happen, or is it all afterwards?
We actually have a group of companies where we've got preventative services as well, like pen testing, security assessments, and simulations. And then we've got the incident response and the digital forensics that is more after the fact. What is actually great from this combination, very unique from this combination of services, I think we're the only company in the country that does preventative services such as pen testing and then the reactive investigations. And where the benefit for us is our pen testers are involved in the incidences that we handle. So they learn firsthand what new techniques the hackers are utilizing. Okay. And they also, from their side, then incorporate that into the pen testing. So our clients gets the benefit of, in real time, seeing simulations and attempted hacks that our team is helping them to safeguard their systems against the current threats.
Okay. So perhaps we can go back a step further. I mean, we were chatting before we started recording, but I know as a professor, you've obviously you've seen a number of things. You've been sort of involved in various areas. Probably one of the local pioneers, I would say, of the digital forensic space in South Africa. Just give us a quick overview of your background, where you started, how your journey's kind of evolved.
I actually started as in law enforcement. I was a fingerprint expert.
Okay.
There wasn't enough money to go studying, so I was fortunate enough to end up in the police service. Went through and then got appointed to start the cyber capacity for the police force. I was the commander of the National Cybercrimes Unit. We started it. Been involved in compiling the ECT Act in the beginning, giving inputs on how digital evidence should be handled in South Africa. And since then, 20 years ago, went out of the police force and started our own companies. Been involved in the new Cybercrimes Act from some input aspects to it, but mainly been involved with the Association of Certified Fraud Examiners in running there or being chairman of the Cyber Forum for South Africa. So what we do there is basically look at standards, making sure that the industry is regulated, and then also doing, so I wrote the standards, for example, for digital evidence in South Africa from the ACFE side. My studies, I actually started studying quite late in my life. Only at age 40 did I attend varsity and got an honours degree and a master's degree. And I'm currently an associate professor at Northwest University. So my field of study is relating to the digital or the legal aspects of digital forensics, how that fits into our law. For example, how evidence must be collected, processed, presented in court, etc.
Okay. And can you give us a bit more insight into the digital forensics sector? I mean, I think you've obviously come from that kind of law enforcement background. But does everyone come from that side, or are they more from the techie side, or is it a bit of a mix? Or are there other people coming from the, as you say, the kind of fraud auditing type backgrounds?
Okay. So digital forensics are very unique in the sense that obviously you need IT background or IT experience, but then combined with that, you need to be able to conduct investigations or have a bit of a background in terms of how to investigate a type of crime. Here we're talking not just of cyber crimes, hacking, etc., but we're also dealing with stuff like child pornography, with falsification of invoices. So our team has been involved in the state capture investigations, in some matters such as Oscar Pretorius's matter, the arms deal, for example. So we analyze computer systems to find evidence of whatever type of crime has been committed. And then also, because we are in court on these matters, you need to have a reference in terms of the legal aspect to it. So we normally recruit IT staff and train them the investigation skills, although we do have team members that are auditors or investigators that we've trained in terms of the IT. The field actually is very understaffed in South Africa. It is one of the areas where we've got critical scarcities in these skills. So just to give you an idea, the president in his State of the Nation address basically mentioned there that the NPA is actively busy with a project to build a digital forensic lab for the NPA. And some of those efforts are to look at local resources as well as international resources to staff it.
Okay. How many practitioners would you say there are in the country, sort of active practitioners?
It's difficult to say. At the forum where I'm the chairman at the ACFE's Cyber Forum, we've got approximately 170 members, although quite a number of them are academics or people that are just interested in the field and has joined not as experts in the field. So I would say we've got less than 100 digital forensic practitioners in South Africa. But if you look at expert level, because we differentiate between practitioners of different levels up to the level where you can be considered as an expert. And the reason why we've got that is not to be finicky about it, but if you want to testify in a court regarding something, if you need to express an opinion, so say, for example, I need to testify and say, I analyzed your computer and I found that you deleted information. They asked me the question, how can I prove that you did it? I need to list those aspects and come up with the opinion. It is my opinion. And only an expert, once you've been qualified by the court and seen in that field as an expert, can you then testify on those type of things, such as an opinion.
Do you know how many experts we've got in the country?
So also difficult to answer. The court basically in every situation, even if I go and testify on a matter, although I've been classified a number of times as an expert, the court goes through a process of establishing your credentials. And the unfortunate part is the opposing party has the opportunity then to test you. So literally I have spent up to 5 days in court where they examine me just on my qualifications, my capability, my experience, work that you've published, etc. So I have to say, I think if I have to do a classification, we've got less than 20 experts in the country.
Okay, sure. And how would someone go about, like if we wanted to encourage more people into the industry, where would they kind of entry points be, would you recommend?
So definitely my start would be looking at IT qualifications. We recruit quite a lot of candidates that's got a BSc computer science degree. That's a very good basis. If you want to go into, from that point, you can also specialize in security type qualifications. So we'll recruit from both those, either just normal IT or security. But then there's also a number of courses that you can attend both locally and internationally, such as your SANS training courses, which is quite an excellent training course that is recognized globally. So we recruit from there, and then to join an entity where you can actually then gain experience in the field.
Okay. So, I mean, you mentioned there are a couple of the cases. Are you able to kind of take us inside behind the curtain of any cases that you've worked on that were either maybe kind of a larger organization, maybe down to a more kind of private individual type scenario?
So we, as I said, we basically do a very wide span of investigations. Looking at normal fraud, corruption investigations, we are involved with investigations such as the state capture, the various legs of the state capture, and myself is one of the experts in some of these cases where I need to go and testify on the court. If we look at incident response, that's quite a large portion of our work, where we are the team that, through the insurance industry in South Africa and direct engagement with clients, we go out. When a client experience a security breach, they call us out. We basically assist them in terms of containing the environment and conducting that investigation. So there we have been the team that is responsible for the majority of the breaches that you've seen in the newspapers, starting from, for example, the Deeds breach, where all the South African citizens' information was leaked. We assisted Experian, for example, on the matter that they were involved in. We work quite regularly for basically the majority of listed companies. Then also we've got clients such as Alexander Forbes, AIG, Hollard, where we are just the team that's on standby for them. Should anything happen, they've got a red telephone telephone that they pick up, and we respond quite quickly for them.
It's like a bat phone directly to you guys.
Basically.
Okay. So obviously you're at that kind of that hot edge of what's happening. You're kind of seeing at the front line. What are the current security trends that you're seeing? I guess what are the kind of the bad actors doing? How are things evolving that maybe you wouldn't have seen 6 months ago?
So if we just look at looking at scams, for example, we are seeing that South Africa is one of the largest cyber predators out there in relation to scams. And then also we are one of the countries that's most attacked or impacted by online scams. So currently in the scamming field, we've got a lot going on in the cryptocurrency scams. So
Okay.
for example, where you can just open your Telegram application and it'll just pop up, these channels where they're promoting and saying, they're simulating it and saying, I'm just reporting I put in $5,000 and the next day it was 10 and then 15. Literally, we conducting investigations. Currently, we've got an investigation where we've got a SIM farm of more than 50,000 cell phones.
Wow.
Where the criminals, syndicates are utilizing those SIM farms to basically populate those type of channels and simulate that there's a lot of interest in that, and they catch people. Also, in terms of Facebook, there's a lot of scams running, advertisements in terms of investment schemes, etc. So how these normally work is they'll either ask you to transfer fiat cash, normal cash, into their account. They buy crypto and they filter the crypto out of the country, or they use it for money laundering. Or they'll ask you to buy crypto and then transfer it to their wallet. Same process, all of a sudden the crypto is gone. These guys are quite sophisticated. They'll register you on a site where you can monitor your portfolio. You can give them suggestions. You can ask them to, sell a bit of Bitcoin and buy Ethereum, etc. Very, very sophisticated. We just finished an investigation where an elderly lady, son invested 16 million rand of her over a 3-week period, and everything was lost.
Wow.
Literally, he was paying, if you want to, so if you realize this is a scam, you ask them to refund you. They'll tell you, but it's in a long-term investment. You have to pay penalties to get it released and all those extra funds. I literally had to drive them to the office location where these guys said their office was, and there was nothing.
Right.
And still then they didn't want to believe us that it is a scam.
Yeah.
So a lot of crypto scamming going on. Then on the other side, more on the cyber type of side, what we're seeing is that ransomware attacks where they're encrypting the data is decreasing. So
Okay.
we basically looked, and it's some of the aspects that I'll also be addressing at the ITWeb Summit this year. There's very few instances where you can get good statistics on what's happening in South Africa. Because we are such a dominant team in this field, we handle between 40 to 60 major breaches per year. And we've started compiling statistics from about 2020 onwards. So we've started building up a great database in terms of what's happening. So what we've seen is that ransomware attacks has been decreasing. And we think it's because of, number one, that people are safeguarding their backups a lot better. That's one of the, the only ways in which you can recover from a ransomware attack is if you are able to restore your data. And then also, people are air-gapping their backups as well as utilizing software that picks up the ransomware and stops it before it runs. So on the other side, the data exfiltration attacks has just doubled more or less as opposed to the ransomware attacks.
Okay.
Last year we saw double extortion, so where they steal your data and then encrypt it. We're still seeing that, but it is as if the hackers is not even going to the extent anymore in terms of just encrypting the information. So the exfiltrations are really picking up. The problem that we've got with the data exfiltrations is it is about 10 times more costly to investigate those and to remediate them. And that was found by the IBM survey here in South Africa, mainly because of the fact that you have to involve lawyers, that there's notification services that you have to do out to the data subjects. And then also, you don't have a point of reference where to start investigating. It could be that the hackers gained access to their environment more than 200 days prior to contacting the victim. So it's a very more complex investigation that needs to be done. We're definitely seeing that they are utilizing AI.
Okay.
So while the victims and the clients are using AI to increase or improve their security, the hackers are also doing it. So we've seen that the average time, the IBM found that the average time a hacker is in an environment is 209 days. Last year, we found on all the breaches we handled that it came down to about 170 days, if I recall now correctly. And it's because they're automating the attack.
Okay. I mean, some of the things that I've picked up sort of internationally is that there's a trend for people to bypass the multifunction, multi-factor authentication, that hackers are re-architecting the back end to lock out people. And yeah, I guess the rise in deepfakes. Are those things that you're seeing? I mean, how do we deal with deepfakes as well?
Definitely. So the deepfakes in the beginning was laughable.
Yeah.
You know, it was there for the joke and stuff. And one thing that a hacker or the criminals in general really specializes in is to apply that in a criminal situation. So what we're seeing is they're using it for man-in-the-middle attack, impersonation attacks. For example, we have situations where they impersonate the CEO or the CFO of an organization, contact the finance department late on a Friday afternoon and say, I've forgotten to send this through. We have to pay it or else we're losing this opportunity or job or whatever. Please make the payment quickly. Also, we find it with romance scams, sextortion, where you'll receive, if you don't believe them, that it's not the real Tom Cruise contacting you, they'll give you a FaceTime call. We have situations now where they're also using deepfake, for example, in terms of contacting people and impersonating police officials, telling you that, listen, they've intercepted a package, they're coming to arrest you, you have to pay them a bribe, or you have to make a deposit for this not to happen, etc. So they're definitely using the AI to the deepfakes to their advantage. In terms of multi-factor authentication, it's one of the most proven things in terms of safeguarding organization. But what we find is that a lot of times, especially with senior management, that there's exceptions made. You know, and it's that old thing of if security becomes cumbersome, then people deviate from the security protocols. So we've had a couple of instances where there was an exception made because of a specific level of user, and that was where the hackers came in. And then also the sophistication of the attacks is definitely increasing. We do have quite a number where the hackers would attack the cookie structure, for example, the tokens that is issued. And they keep those tokens alive. Therefore, they have access up to 30 days into that environment without having to do a second two-factor authentication.
So I saw something, Kaspersky's incident response analyst report. I think that was out earlier this month. Said that long-lasting attacks that persist for more than a month accounted for 35% of the total attacks. Is that something you're seeing? Are longer-lasting attacks on the rise?
So if I just take our own statistics into consideration, where our average is 117 days, then I would say definitely more than 50% in that scenario of ours is longer than 117 days.
Okay. And what advice would you give to IT teams when they're responding to a breach? Obviously, they discover something. What's the next step?
If we take one step back, we also advise clients, if you don't have your IT capacity internally, be careful that you don't 100% trust an external IT service provider. In more than 9% of our matters, the IT service provider is responsible for the breach, in the sense that either it's one of their personnel using that environment for cryptojacking, for example, or where the hack came through them. So we had one case, for example, where the IT consultant's laptop was compromised, and he used the same password on all clients. On the other side, in general, when a breach occurs, it means something went wrong. And if you're outsourcing, for example, your backups or your firewall maintenance to external company, we've had 2 cases where the external company told us the firewall was up to date. When we conducted the investigation, we found that they updated that firewall after the breach happened, and that the firewall was the cause of it. So be careful for that. Then if we talk about, what's the first, so for a system owner or employer, be careful of that, consider that. From a point of view from a internal IT team that is responding to a breach, don't be too hasty in terms of fixing the problem. And what I mean with that is, a lot of times we see that the whole objective of an IT team is to make the problem go away, fix the problem, get the networks to work, because that's why management is screaming at them. But the problem is, if you don't conduct an investigation of exactly what happened, you might be living under a situation where you won't know what the hackers did, you don't know what they took out, you don't know what backends do they have in the environment. We conducted 2 investigations in the past year where we saw that the hackers, before encrypting the environment, went into the financial system, and we couldn't figure out why. So after we decrypted the information for the client, we advised them that we saw this access. They did an analysis, and we found in both instances that they were making quite large yearly licensing fee payments to America of a couple of million rand. The hackers changed the banking detail on the system and just left it there, encrypted it afterwards with the hope that it never gets detected, and when that payment comes due, it goes out to them. So don't format the server. The problem that we've got is, if you look at it, cybercrime is a crime. It's a crime scene. A server that is hacked, a server that is encrypted is actually a crime scene. Now just think for yourself, if you go to a murder scene and you clean it up and fix it before phoning the police. So consideration in terms of that must also be given. I have to acknowledge the unfortunate part is, it's not a situation where you'll be able to phone the police and say, we were hacked, we'll wait for you to come out. They're most probably not going to have the capacity to help. But then make sure that you handle that crime scene in the correct way, that you can hand it over to investigation later.
I mean, you touched on a point that I wanted to kind of jump to next, actually. How mature is our justice system in dealing with these types of cases? Yeah.
So if we look at cyber, well, if in answering that question, we have to kick off with the Electronic Transaction Communication Act came into force in 2002. That's when South Africa first recognized data as an aspect that could be stolen, for example. Before then, if we wanted to prosecute somebody for hacking a system, we have to try and fall back on stuff like illegal entry into a premises, or trespassing, or housebreaking, something like that. So we've gotten the ECT Act that changed the scenario for us. And in 2019, we got the Cybercrimes Act. We got the POPIA Act. So in terms of our legislation, I want to say, is top-notch.
Okay.
But then we're sitting with the situation, the capacity. These type of experts are really expensive. We've got scenarios where a local bank would come and double our personnel salary. We've got international firms that are tripling their salaries.
Sure.
In the past, we could retain staff, and the brain drain's got a massive impact on us here. So we could retain a person that didn't want to leave his family, his parents, for example, and go and work in Dubai. But nowadays you can work in Betty's Bay and you're servicing clients in Europe. So the barrier to entry in South Africa has become very, very low. And the problem that we're facing is the government does not have those type of funds. They can't, counter offer a person that easily. It takes anything between 2 and 5 years to get a person to the level that I would consider, just allowing him to conduct an investigation on his own and maybe go and testify. The problem that we've got is, as an expert, if you testify on a matter and a court finds that you are an unreliable expert, you'll never be recognized again as an expert.
Sure.
So your problem is that first time that a person, for example, testifies, he can be destroyed. So you have to make sure that he's capable when you send him to that. And then we're sitting with a scenario in terms of that's just for normal investigations. If we look at cyber investigations, we know we don't have the capacity that other countries have in terms of monitoring our domains, being proactive about scanning for child pornography, detecting scams, closing them down beforehand. So, no, South Africa's got a huge need in terms of skills in this area.
Okay. And then I guess, the other side of that is we've obviously got the courts and the justice system and like the maturity there. But tell me about the criminals themselves, I guess local criminals, whether they're digital or whether they're your old school criminals who are using mobile phones and laptops. And do they know that they're leaving digital footprints? Are they getting more wise to that, or is it still like it's easy to catch people in that side?
They say, if you want to get smart in terms of committing crimes, you need to be caught, go to jail, and there you'll learn how to do it right the next time. So we're definitely seeing that. Number one, the syndicates might have started off in terms of drugs, prostitution, violent type of crimes, etc., but they definitely progress into the cyber space. We have a combination of if you look at a large syndicate, they do need to have that enforcers. They need to have people that is able to move money, to sell goods, to steal goods. So it is definitely organized crime, the majority of it. If we look at our, where the threat actors are coming from that is attacking South Africa, we can only trace from a private company side, we can only trace the last hop. So if somebody's sitting in Russia and they're jumping to Britain and coming from Britain, we can only trace it there. Then we hand it over to law enforcement to take over. So the majority of our cases that we investigate, 28% is coming from South Africa, the last hop. 28% from Russia. Then we've got Singapore, we've got America, and then we've got Africa, East and West Africa. So our problem is really coming from those areas as the last stop. What we know is that the majority of attacks is emanating from East West Africa, as well as the East Bloc countries. But our local criminals are definitely, not far behind, although they specialize more in scams than, for example, your ransomware type of attacks. We've been successful in identifying 2 hackers last December that we traced down to Cape Town. And in an effort with the Hawks, we were able to actually arrest them. They are currently still in jail, so they've spent jail for about 1 year and 3 months. They haven't received bail, and we're hoping that those are going to be the first guilties under the new Cybercrimes Act.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And then one of the other services I think you offer is OSINT, so open source intelligence.
That's it.
Can you give me what the professional definition is of that? And then is there much of it happening in South Africa? I mean, to me, I think it's quite an interesting area, and I'd like to see more of it and how we're using it. But what's the actual on the ground scenario?
So in terms of OSINT, and the name basically stipulates, it's open source. It's not supposed to be where you're breaking into databases. So I think from a South African perspective and globally, we're very sensitive to intelligence gathering, in the sense that Big Brother is watching or government is watching, and then also not to hack into environments where you're accessing data and collecting that data illegally. So the open source intelligence or information gathering is basically at looking at available databases online, collecting information from social media on individuals, doing cross comparisons to it. So it is really up to the practitioner or the person that's doing it to apply these skills in terms of, if I can build a profile on a person, for example, there's a database where I can get the type of vehicle that you're driving, and there's a different source where I can collect number plates and telephone numbers, etc. I'm pasting all of this information together and to get a more complex or complete picture of my subject. And that's basically where our open source plays a role. We also utilize it quite effectively when we're preparing for a case. So say, for example, a law firm will ask us to come and do a search and seizure. We'll collect information regarding the individuals on which it is, looking at the what the activities are. Can we see from the Facebook profiles, when are they at home, when are they away, when are they attending office, where is their movements, or just to, for example, use Google Earth to look at the premises and see, listen, we've got an outbuilding, maybe there's an entrance to the house next door, and those type of information is very critical when you do a search and seizure, for example. So that intelligence gathering or information gathering is basically to prepare you better to conduct the investigation, or to form some guidelines for where to focus during the investigation.
Okay. Danny, that's been fantastic. Thank you very much. I found that very interesting. And to our viewers, to our listeners, thank you for joining us today. I hope you found it as interesting as I did. And please remember to like, share, and subscribe to this video.